sure when.
Yeah.
This message, you like this guy for having one too.
It never fails.
We had
So.
Number 14.
Yeah.
Tell me how you know. I've seen those before, they've been
Yeah, that was
right on. Just right over here.
I didn't think.
What? Hey, Tom.
Oh, right.
I understand. Oh, well, me either, but I own farms.
Came back.
Yeah.
Randy came back too. You came back too, huh? For another week? You came back for another week? Good.
Wow. Found out we were paying.
My God, we're moving forward.
Hey, Pat.
Full table.
Andrew? How are you, Sally?
I'm doing good. Good to see you.
Everybody said you were Sally.
You knew Smart Meter? I don't know.
Did you have a nice weekend?
Yeah, not too bad.
What'd you do?
Just hung out with the kids. Just didn't had to work.
Feeling good?
Yeah.
Hey, Sally,
Still don't have.
things I gotta give you.
Why do we not have meetings there? Behind you.
Yeah.
So Lowell, is this where we're gonna have our retreat at?
Hold your finger. Remind me to suffer yet, or
I'll get my personal set out.
Hey.
That looks like July 22nd.
Pastor Dixie.
Tonight I'm going to read from Matthew 6:9. We say to our Father who is in heaven, that your name is above every name that is named. Holy is your name. Your kingdom come, Father, and your will be done in Freeport. Your will be done in expanding businesses. We all pray, amen.
Thank you. I'd like to call to order this regularly scheduled meeting of the City Council. Madam Clerk, would you please take the roll?
Mayor Miller,
Here.
Alderpersons Clem,
Here.
McClanathan,
Here.
Ross,
Here.
Smith,
Here.
Busker,
Here.
Brashaw,
here.
Keister,
Here.
and Chesney.
Here.
And the Pledge of Allegiance led by Alderperson Chesney.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, first on the agenda is the approval of the agenda, but we are going to be removing item number 14. So is there such a motion for the approval?
So move.
Second.
We have a motion made by Keister, seconded by Busker. All those in favor of approval of the agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passed. Motion made by Alderperson Brashaw. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Alderman McClanathan. All those in favor of the approval of the minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. Public comments. Is there any public comment on there, Brad? All right. And whereas Freeport, Illinois is no different than any other community in the country, but chooses to publicly state and place our full support behind local educators, mental health professionals, athletic coaches, PAC leaders, and parents as partners, residents, to take the time to inquire as to the well-being of their family, friends, and neighbors over the next few days and genuinely convey their appreciation of their existence by any gesture that they deem appropriate. Now, whereas I, Jody Miller, Mayor of the City of Freeport, Illinois, do hereby proclaim September as National Suicide Prevention Awareness Month in the City of Freeport. And next on the agenda is the consent agenda. Is there any item that a council member wishes to remove for the purposes of discussion? Seeing none, we have an offer sheet for the Fire Chief Todd Allen. We have the approval to receive and place on file the City Treasurer's Report, August 2017, building permits, August 2017, the approval of the water and sewer bills payable in the amount of $277,648.84, the approval of the finance bills payable in the amount of $839,170.55, and the approval of the payroll for pay period ending September 2nd, 2017, in the total of $460,151.79. Is there such a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So move.
Second.
Motion made by Keister, seconded by, who was the second?
I'll second.
McClanathan, seconded by McClanathan. Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Chesney.
Aye.
Clem.
Aye.
McClanathan.
Aye.
Ross.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Busker.
Aye.
Brashaw.
Aye.
Keister.
Aye.
Okay, on to appointments for number 6. There are 2 appointments for boards and commissions. Madam Clerk, could you please read that into the record?
Are we going to vote on these together?
Yeah.
That's fine.
Acceptance of an appointment of Sarah Pesca to the Board of Zoning Appeals effective immediately through June 30th, 2020, and acceptance of an appointment of Christopher Fye to the Historic Preservation Commission effective immediately through February 28th, 2020.
Thank you. Is there such a motion for the approval of the appointments?
So moved.
Motion made by McClanathan, seconded by Brashaw. Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll on this?
Chesney.
Aye.
Clem.
Aye.
McClanathan.
Aye.
Ross.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Busker.
Aye.
Brashaw.
Aye.
Keister.
Aye.
Motion passes 8-0. Sorry, Mike.
Okay, on to item number 7 is the second reading of Ordinance 2017-65. Madam Clerk, could you please read this into the record?
An ordinance amending Part 2 Administration Code, Title 6 Administration, Chapter 236 Accounting and Finance of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Freeport. Ordinance 2017-65 requires that the council be notified in writing when bond rating changes. At the council meeting 9/5/17, Keister moved and Busker seconded that this ordinance be forwarded for approval and was automatically laid over to tonight's meeting.
Is there any further discussion on this ordinance? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll on the passage of Ordinance 2017-65?
Chesney.
Aye.
Clem.
Aye.
McClanathan.
Aye.
Ross.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Busker.
Aye.
Brashaw.
Aye.
Keister.
Aye.
Passes 8-0.
Thank you. Item number 8 is in first reading, Ordinance 2017-66. So could you please read this into the record?
An ordinance amending Part 16 Fire Prevention Code, Chapter 1630 Miscellaneous Regulations, Chapter 1630.06 Fireworks of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Freeport, Illinois. At the September 11 Committee of the Whole, a motion to move forward with modification was made by Alderperson Brashaw, seconded by Alderperson Smith, and passed unanimously.
Over the Independence Day weekend, I know I had several phone calls, as I'm sure many of the alderpersons did as well, concerning all of the fireworks that were shot off within the city limits, which sparked our reason to look into this ordinance. So, Fire Chief Miller.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This particular ordinance amendment addresses and it defines the type of fireworks that are recognized for sales within the state of Illinois. A lot of this information came from the state fire marshal, which is very restrictive on the types of fireworks that are permitted for sales. More specifically, this ordinance amendment addresses, again, defines the types, it addresses the sales in nature, and also dovetails into the transient merchant ordinance, which is to be discussed next. Effectively, what this will do will eliminate the sales of any fireworks via a transient merchant. In other words, you won't have somebody setting up a sales distribution site in a parking lot And even with our best efforts on inspecting and regulating those, as soon as we would leave, it appears that they would be potentially selling other things. So what this does, it provides for the sales of novelty fireworks and approved consumer fireworks from a retail store. We haven't had any issues with retail merchants selling fireworks. More of our issues have been from sales through parking lots and specific sites such as that. So this cleans it up. It also, strengthens the existing ordinance that we had in place.
Any questions?
Mayor. Go ahead, Tom.
No, go ahead. I was just gonna make a motion to move it forward.
Okay.
Is that what you were both going to do, or did you want to?
I had some
McLean,
questions.
did you-
Go
Okay.
ahead, Alderman.
Could someone talk to me with these definitions that we have here? What's the relationship, you indicated with the fire marshal, but what's the relationship to this ordinance to the prohibitions in the state statute currently?
Well, the statute, again, defines the strength or the amount of grains of pyrotechnic components within there. So I think in other states, it's pretty loose, and it talks about much more powerful items, whereas this defines exactly what is approved. So if we have somebody, even a retail merchant, we can look at the list of what are approved novelty fireworks that's generated by the state fire marshal, and then we can follow up and enforce accordingly.
If I could, Madam Mayor, if I could add into that. So one of the issues that we're having with enforcing this is because the fire marshals, the state requires specific grains or explosives. There's not a clear definition as to what ordinances, our guys basically have to be scientists as they walk into it. This will give clear guidance as to what's allowed. Basically any fireworks that takes off from the ground or shoots up is eliminated. It makes our inspection and enforcement by both the fire and police much simpler than it is with the current ordinances that are within the state fire marshals, where they put a grain and weight on the amount of fireworks.
Mayor, follow-up?
Alderman Clanathan?
Thank you. I do still see some grain and, or at least some weight, and grains also in ours as well, for this ordinance. So I know this is just first reading. I don't think we're suspending the rules on it, but I'd just like a little further clarification in the next couple of weeks on that. I did also have a question on section 2, subparagraph A1B4. That's where approved consumer fireworks.
Did you guys say that again, Pete?
Yeah, 2, subparagraph small a, number 1, then large or capital B, and then 4. Approved consumer fireworks shall comply with all requirements of the state fire marshal as well as applicable provisions of the Illinois Pyrotechnic Use Act. The final sentence on that was all handheld consumer fireworks are prohibited. I didn't see a definition in regards to handheld consumer fireworks. How do we define that for purposes of this? Attorney Zito?
This language from that Romanet number 4 mirrors the language from the state statute. There was not, as far as I could see, an actual defined definition for handheld consumer fireworks. Approved consumer fireworks is defined. Then I think it just went back to just the common, determination as, are you going to hold this or not in your hand there? So there was not, from what I could see, though, an actual separate definition of handheld consumer approved consumer firework.
So as far as that subsection of a subsection goes, we are basically mirroring the state statute and to what was already previously illegal?
Correct. Right. So we just wanted to mirror that language, kind of as boilerplate state statute language there. So.
And a final follow-up then? Mayor? Or do you have more, Attorney? Okay. Final follow-up, Mayor?
Alderman Clanathan?
Thank you. I see on section 3, paragraph 2, We're going to be doing a blanket prohibition of the sale of any fireworks, whether legal or illegal, by transient merchants under this. What's the thought process behind that?
I believe at the COW, we had a request come from the floor to eliminate basically any type of fireworks that shot into the air or could be explosive in nature. And this was set up to address that. If this is too restrictive, we can go back and modify it for second reading.
Sure. My thought, Attorney Zito.
Yeah, Attorney Zito has a thought on that.
My understanding that the original intent of prohibiting transient merchants from selling any sort of fireworks, whether it's the novelty type or not, was, as the chief indicated, that there was an enforcement issue that was difficult, that when an initial inspection would be done of a transient vendor, and the transient vendor would say, these are the items I'm selling. You see, I'm only selling snakes and glowworms and poppers and, you know, everything that would otherwise be legal under this definition, all the novelties and novelty fireworks. And then the chief would, you know, the fire department would say, okay, you're approved then, because this is what you've shown me that you're selling. And then all of a sudden, the fire department goes away and they go into the trunk and pull out the bigger, you know, gram fireworks displays there, and then they start selling those. So it became very difficult to enforce, because they would show us one thing and then sell additional things after the fire department left. So it was the chief's idea that, hey, if we just prohibited the transient merchants, because that's where the problems were, was just we were finding that it was only the transient merchants that were kind of doing a bait and switch sort of situation. So,
Do we have any examples in the last couple of years where transient merchants have been cited for something of this nature?
Chief Miller?
Thank you. It's been cited, no. If we had actually had the evidence and we were able to say, this is, you know, a violation of what was agreed to, and actually, to dovetail onto that, I personally had the list of what was approved, what they submitted, what was approved. I walked there and looked at all their stock, and it was different than what was approved. And speaking to the sales representative, well, that was our home office that changed this order, so we'll get you the new information on it. And so there was inconsistencies as to what they applied for and what was approved and what they were selling. Now, I think law enforcement, even the mayor's office, received phone calls from other residents stating that, you know, we knew somebody acquired some illegal things from your transient merchant down the street. Now, if I was there directly, it would have been shut down and, you know, sent out of town. But we had other specific issues with this vendor in particular, with cleanup and with maintenance of their lot. And, you know, this will address the good, honest family people that want to have snakes or sparklers for their family. They can go to local retail stores and acquire the approved novelty fireworks that are in some ways deemed more safe than the consumer products or even the illegal fireworks. What we're trying to do is eliminate the ability for an independent salesperson in a parking lot from doing what we think they are doing in terms of bait and switch, changing items that they're selling from what's on the approved list to what they have in their storage vehicle.
Mayor?
Alderman Chesney?
Thank you. Chief Miller, just to piggyback on what Alderman Clem said, do we have any data that suggests that a transient merchant is in fact selling illegal fireworks? If nobody's been cited, what evidence do we have to support that theory?
Well, what we have is, I don't have a smoking gun, so to speak, from these vendors. We've had numerous residents saying that, yeah, my kid came home with these higher powered items from the transient merchant, the merchant that's set up in the parking lot. And we've done our best. We inspected them multiple times this year. And again, I pointed out that their stock was different than what was on the approved list. And so we'll send you an a different list, and we'll request approval for these things. So, in my opinion, they're not holding up their end of the bargain, what they applied for and what was approved. And from a fire prevention standpoint, they should not be permitted to conduct business if they're selling something that they didn't apply for approval on. Whether, even if that's that switched item, even if it's a novelty firework, that's not what was indicated on their application, and that's not what was approved.
Follow up, Mayor?
Alderman Chesney.
Thank you. And Fire Chief, what is going to prevent a transient merchant from putting up shop 5 feet in the county? Have we worked with the county officials to make sure that our codes are consistent with their codes? Because we still have a lot of pockets within the city of Freeport that is county land, and I don't understand what we're trying to prevent with this.
Chief Miller.
Thank you. Well, I don't believe there is something that would preclude them from being able to set up in the county. However, this takes the city out of any terms of responsibility or condoning the sale of that type of product. Now, certainly this ordinance isn't going to stop somebody from driving 20 miles north into Wisconsin either, but we can at least say those products are not available in our community.
Mayor,
Alderman Bradshaw.
thank you. I'm not sure who this question should be addressed to, because I'm not sure if our financial director will have some of this information yet. Transient merchants, do they pay sales tax to the city of Freeport?
They do, as part of the registration fee, but we would have to dig into and actually get the actual figures on how much we gain from transient merchants. In fact, with the new law that's gone into effect, even the farmers market, the merchants that are at the farmers market have to pay sales tax when they're registering with FDDF.
Thank you.
Mayor,
Alderman Planathan.
thank you. Comments. One, I understand the issue trying to be addressed, absolutely. I recall the phone calls myself last 4th, particularly, the week and stuff like that. And I realize this is just first reading, so I guess I still have a little hesitation as to whether what we have here crafted will help us get to where we're looking to go. I guess I would encourage us, regardless of where we go forward on this, use whatever tools we have in regards to the enforcement aspect, whether it is state or local. And I realize that can be hard too, sometimes, because you got to come upon it and there are things of that nature, and you respond to a call. By the time you respond to a call, usually someone's done with it. So no, I appreciate what we're trying to address here. Hope we can maybe see some progress on it, and if not, we can address it again down the road.
Madam Mayor?
Alderman Clem.
One of the, one of the things that was mentioned that I'd just like to ask about, because it kind of falls into which brackets it in. Chief, you mentioned sparklers, okay? Kids waving sparklers, and then in here it says no handheld items. I mean, I'll tell you, I believe in moving this forward and taking and alter some of the language on the stuff that we've talked about, but that to me kind of is just a bad thing to have there. Tell me if I'm wrong, or you know what I'm saying.
Chief Miller.
Thank you. To your point, you're absolutely correct. But then when you start looking at the fine details and digging down deep, the sparkler has a less of a weight component, grain component. So the handheld addresses the consumer fireworks, whereas the sparkler is the novelty firework. I agree with you though, but that's the determination between those two types of issues.
Mayor?
Alderman Smith.
I don't have any misgivings about adopting a new fireworks ordinance if it makes it easier for us to enforce, and this doesn't seem to impose any greater restrictions than the current state law does. I think enforcing an ordinance, based on my experience, is much easier than trying to impose the state law, because honestly, the police deal with fireworks issues about once a year, and thumbing through the state statutes to find the right state law to apply, and then understanding how the penalties are imposed under the state law is an arcane process. It would be easier and better, from my experience, to have an ordinance to deal with it as a petty offense. You cite people and you just deal with it quickly. I do think this needs some massaging. I don't think that it's necessarily the right thing to impose a strict prohibition against all itinerant vendors. I think if nothing else, it removes from the city's purview any kind of enforcement action, because it does force people out of the city. And if they do move 5 feet outside the city limits, the city has absolutely no control over what they sell outside what the county chooses to enforce. So I think it does need some work in that regard.
Madam Mayor,
Alderman Clem.
I'd like to make a proposal to move it forward and alter the language in it as has been discussed here tonight. And if we need to hold it over before another reading, we have that opportunity to do that.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
I'd recommend to the council that we bring it back in front, not on the next council meeting, but allow us to rework it and then bring it back in front of the cow for, and then bring it to the second meeting in October after the cow.
Okay, Alderman Clem, would you like to change that motion slight?
Sure, I'll make the motion that Mr. Crowe just did.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion made by Alderman Clem, seconded by Alderman Chesney to move this on to the next committee of the whole.
Mayor.
Alderman Keister.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, to build upon what Alderman Smith said, it'd be interesting, and I don't know if we could ever find out the facts of what percentage of the fireworks that are going off actually was purchased of these vendors in Freeport, and how much were getting out of town. I mean, the places I've been to in the past where they've had the big fireworks, they haven't come from around here. They've come from Kentucky, Tennessee, other places where people were traveling around. They picked them up and they brought them back. I don't disagree that we need to do this and try and keep it from being sold here in Freeport. We could debate the transients part, but I agree that we've got work to do on it, and I just wanted to say that, you know, it's gonna have some effect, but I don't think it's gonna have a total effect like we're hoping for.
Madam Mayor?
Alderman Clem.
Just one comment, and I really appreciate what Bob said, because if you stop and think about this, if you're a policeman and you're going to go out there and give somebody a ticket or arrest them and you've got nothing to back you out there, there's no sense in being there. And I think this gives you the meat that at least you can talk to somebody and have the authority and have the rules there that something can be done.
Okay, let's move on to item number 9. Madam Clerk, could you please read into the record the first reading of Ordinance 2017-67?
Draft of an ordinance amending Part 8, Business Regulations and Taxation, Title 2, Business Regulations, Chapter 872, Transient Merchants of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Freeport, Illinois. At the September 11th Committee of the Whole, a motion to move forward with modification was made by Alderperson Brashaw, seconded by Alderperson Keister, and passed unanimously.
Mayor,
Alderman Chesney.
motion to move to the October 9th. Ow.
Second.
We have a motion made by Alderperson Chesney to move Ordinance 2017-67 to the next Committee of the Whole, seconded by Alderman Busker. Is there any further discussion on this ordinance? Seeing none, we will move this on. Do we need a? So we will move this on to the next Committee of the Whole. On to item number 10 is the first reading of Ordinance 2017-69. Madam Clerk, could you read this into the record?
An ordinance amending Part 2 Administration Code, Title 8, Boards, Commissions, Bureaus, Chapter 274, Airport Commission, Section 274.02, Composition, and Section 274.03, Appointments of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Freeport, Illinois.
This ordinance was brought to us with the suggestion of the chairman of the Airport Commission in asking for more strategic oversight from the city as well as the economic development, and it simply adds 2 members of the city staff to the board by the recommendation of the manager and approved by the mayor. So, Manager Crowe, would you like to add to this ordinance, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This as the mayor pointed out, was approached by the chairman of the board. He felt that there were some key items that were being missed within the board. One was the financial oversight. The other was the economic development within the board. And he felt that as the relationship of the board has to bring those recommendations forward to myself, and then to present to the committee, the council as a whole, that he did not have the right makeup on the committee. We had initially approached Attorney Zito and about this, and talking with their firm, they felt it was easier to add 2 new members to the board because it would give us that odd number. So there isn't. Initially, we had approached them about 1, so they felt that 2, and that we can then address and put the right members from the city staff on there. One change is this ordinance does take out a requirement. Our current ordinance says that they can hold no other office within the city. That means that we would only could appoint a person like the IT director who doesn't, unlike appointing the economic development, community development director to the airport commission, or the financial director to the airport commission. It would limit us, so that's the other thing we've taken out of this ordinance.
Mayor. Motion to move this ordinance forward for second reading?
Second.
Actually, Madam Mayor, I would like to suspend the rules on this one because we have an airport commission tomorrow.
Okay.
Motion to suspend.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion to move it forward made by Alderman Smith, seconded by Alderman McClanathan, and a motion to suspend the rules made by Alderman Busker, seconded by Alderman Chesney. Suspension of the rules is non-debatable and must pass by a 2/3 majority. Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll on the suspension of the rules only for Ordinance 2017-69?
Chesney.
Aye.
Clem.
Aye.
McClanathan.
Aye.
Ross.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Busker.
Aye.
Brashaw.
Aye.
Keister.
Aye.
Passes 8-0.
So now before you is for the final passage of Ordinance 2017-69. Is there any further discussion?
Mayor.
Madam Mayor?
Alderman Chesney?
Thank you. Attorney Zito, just a few things to the ordinance. One, the ordinance does speak to a qualification under 274.05 that the commissioners must be a resident of Freeport. Do we need to put in language that exempts the 2 city appointees from being residents of Freeport? No, we don't.
Well, we want to appoint to it.
We want to appoint perhaps
that-
non-residents because they
Right,
would be.
a city official or a city employee.
If that's the case, and there is a blanket provision that requires that all members be residents, then yes, so there's an exception.
And if we're putting this on second reading, what would be your recommended amendment to the ordinance in the form of a motion?
So you'd be looking to amend this. I would just ask for a motion to be made to amend this ordinance to include language to reflect that the 2 additional city employee appointees may do not have to be residents of the city.
Okay. I got one more question, Mayor.
Alderman Chesney?
Thank you, Attorney Zito. We don't identify how many commissioners there are in this ordinance. Do you recommend that we also include this so we don't have to revisit this at a later date?
In 274.02, it does say the commission shall consist of, it says 7, but we're amending it to 9 members, so.
Understood, missed that. Okay, so your original motion would be what again?
To amend this ordinance to include a provision that the 2 city employee appointees to the commission do not have to be residents of the city.
Okay, I make a motion to your suggestion.
Second.
Mayor.
Oh,
Madam Clerk has some.
Madam Clerk?
Yes, I think we have too many motions.
We have the motion made with the amendment, is the only one on the floor, with Alderman Chesney, seconded by Alderman Keister.
Yeah, we're okay.
Okay, so we have the original motion, suspension of rules, and now this is the amendment portion of it?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
We haven't discussed the original motion.
Okay. I need more paper.
Further discussion.
Madam Clerk.
Alderman
Or it
McClanahan.
has- Okay, Mayor, thank you. So Manager Crowe, your intent is to have it be department heads on this?
That's correct.
Okay. In light of that, then, isn't our residency issue kind of a short-term?
It is. We have we do have one department head that has agreed in her employment agreement to move to the city after the graduation of her daughter from school, but she is currently not a resident in the city, but will be.
Right, within a matter of months, we're talking.
Well,
correct, or
yeah, a year.
Okay, but what I'm getting at is we're putting in through the amendments and a blanket exception, and I don't think that's really our intent to have that be a blanket exception, unless I'm reading you guys wrong. If we want to pass it through this way now, it's fine, but we're probably going to want to revisit it down the road if we're going to be in a situation, obviously department heads down the road are going to be residents of the city by our ordinance, right?
Right. They will be required to live within.
So this will be moot, in the not too distant future.
That's correct. The other two departments we're considering for this to be appointed as both reside within the city.
Okay.
I think you could change it after that annual period. However, I think it would just be a house cleaning item because it is moot.
Yeah, just remember to do that down the road then, I guess.
We'll come back and readdress this and remove this after.
All right.
Okay, so further discussion on the amended version.
Mayor, just a point of clarification. So I'm not reading in the ordinance or the proposed language any requirement to be city residents. Is that the rule for all commission holders? Or people?
It depends on which commission board we're talking about. For the airport board, yes, they have to be a resident of Freeport.
Where this language is, Roxanne and I actually talked about this language. So we've taken sections out of if there was an airport authority to build this. And if you have an airport authority, you're required to live within the area of the authority. Because this is a commission, we don't necessarily have to do that with this. But this particular commission does have that ordinance does have that requirements within the ordinance.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Alderman Clem.
Excuse me again, I'm sorry. I think what we're trying to do is real simple here, but it's complicated to do legally to make sense, because I don't want you to see you're lining yourself up to say, we've got two city employees that live outside the district that are on the board, and then you go in and tell one of the commissioners now that's on the board that he can't be on the board because he's not a citizen. Does that make sense? I mean, I'm just trying to save us a headache down the road because it could come up. Do we know if all 7 members of the board
Yes, they
right
are.
now are in the city?
They are.
They are? Okay. Then there's not an issue, you know? Okay. Just clarification. And is our vote, excuse me, Madam Mayor, is our vote this time going to be on just the amendment or the whole amendment and the amendment and the original?
Attorney Zito said it's just the amendment.
Just amendment. Okay, thank you.
Mayor,
Alderman
which
Smith.
amendment? I guess I understood we were going to withdraw any amendments and then address that later. Is that, or was that just informal discussion?
Just informal.
Okay, so by clarification, what is the amendment then?
The current amendment that's on the floor is to amend the ordinance as presented to remove the residency requirement for the 2 new city employee appointees to the commission.
Thank you.
If that is approved, then you will have the underlying motion of this ordinance as with that amendment in it that then you guys would vote.
Okay.
There, so.
So, Madam Clerk, do you have what's on the floor as the amendment only?
I do, but I missed a second. Did we have
The
one?
second was Alderman Keister.
Thank you.
Any further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, could you take the roll on the passage of the amendment only?
Chesney,
Aye.
Clem,
Aye?
McClanathan,
Aye.
Ross,
Aye.
Smith, Busker,
Aye.
Brashaw,
Aye.
and Keister. Passes 8-0 on the amendment only.
Okay, so now before us is the final passage of the amended version of Ordinance 2017-69. Any further discussion on the amended version?
Mayor,
Alderman Brashaw.
thank you. If I'm to understand this, these two persons would be appointed immediately if, upon passage of this?
Correct.
Okay, and follow-up?
Yes.
I'm looking at tomorrow's agenda for the Airport Commission. Would this be listed under number 11, status report on current projects, agreements with city council actions?
Manager Crowe?
I'm not sure I understand that question.
To, excuse me, Manager Crowe, to formally have these persons on the board as of tomorrow, is this when you will be addressing the Airport Commission? Would be under number 11, the status report on current projects, agreements, city council actions?
I come in and address this board, either myself or Tom Dole does on those actions. These members, if we approve this and then appoint the two people to the committee, they will actually take positions on the committee tomorrow morning, or tomorrow at lunch.
Okay,
So it does not have to be addressed on that.
okay, thank you, sir.
Mayor?
Alderman Keister?
Yes, a couple quick things. First of all, I think it's a good idea, especially with the economic development aspect of it. I think we've got a lot of potential out there at the airport, and if we start bringing that aspect in there, I think we can make some major improvements on there. However, since I do have a hangar out there and am affected by the commission and what they say, I will be abstaining from voting on this due to conflict of interest.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
Madam Mayor?
One more.
Alderman Clem?
Just one, and it's a small one, but you could take it either way. When this was introduced, it said it was brought up by the manager. We're meaning the manager of the city, not the manager from the airport.
Correct.
Just wanted to verify that, so.
Alderman Smith?
Well, it's got nothing to do with the ordinance, but I don't think they can attend the meetings tomorrow based on the language that we've got before us, because it says that the appointments shall be made by the mayor with the consent and approval of the council. So if the appointments are made, I don't think they can attend tomorrow's meeting. Unless it's somewhere on the agenda where.
No, it's not. You are correct. So it's a point of order, all right. But they will attend as a non-voting member, but they will be on the panel with the understanding, so.
Yeah, because this puts them as voting members, so it wouldn't stop them from being able to attend. Any further discussion on the amended version? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll on the final passage? Oh, no, we need a motion.
The motion is already there.
Yes, sir.
I think I made the motion.
You made the primary and second.
Oh, you made the motion for the amended version. Do we need a motion for the final passage? No?
Madam Clerk?
My recollection was that there was an original motion made to just bring it up for discussion. Madam Clerk, do you have that?
Smith made the motion, McClanathan seconded.
And then we went into a motion to suspend the rules. That was voted on, and then we went into a motion to amend the underlying motion. That was voted on, so now we have the underlying motion as amended that's before the council.
All right, well then, Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll on the final passage?
Chesney,
Aye.
Clem,
Aye.
McClanathan,
Aye.
Ross,
Aye.
Smith,
Aye.
Busker,
Aye.
Brashaw,
Aye.
Keister.
Abstain.
Oh, that's right, sorry. And that passes 7-0.
Thank you. Item number 11 is the adoption of Resolution 2017-48. Madam Clerk, could you please read this into the record?
A resolution authorizing the acceptance of the Federal Emergency Management Agency Fire Prevention and Safety Grant Award.
Chief Miller.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. We're pleased to be awarded this This grant on behalf of the Fire Prevention and Safety component to the Assistance to Firefighters Grant, or a FEMA grant. Our total amount that we were awarded was $12,845, and today we discovered that we do have a $643 match or an in-kind, so that in-kind will be satisfied by our inspector, our investigator, through his normal daily duties. So in essence, we're gonna elect to go with the in-kind type match. So the basis of this grant is to provide for additional equipment for our fire investigators, plural, and our fire inspector. So some of those components are a laptop, computer, tough book. That way he can start logging his findings or their findings out in the field instead of making notes and hand scribing them. Also, this tough book can be used in conjunction with fire inspections within the business community. Have a more accurate and possible printed version of their inspection sheet as well. It provides for revenues for a new and improved camera. My understanding is the investigator's camera is pretty worn out. Also, there's a component in there for training and other miscellaneous tools and accessories which are be to our advantage out on the fire scene.
Madam Clerk, can you make that note for the change in that for the $643 in kind?
So noted.
Any further discussion?
Madam Mayor,
Alderman Brashaw.
motion to adopt.
Second.
Any further discussion? We have a motion on the floor made by Alderperson Brashaw, seconded by Alderman Keister for the adoption of Resolution 2017-48. Any further?
Mayor,
Alderman Keister?
I just want to state that with the fire department, putting the fire out is very important, but investigating and figuring out how it started and catching people that did it is also equally, if not greater, of importance. And to be able to get this kind of money to buy equipment to help facilitate that, I think is a wonderful thing, and I am in full support of it.
Any further? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll for the passage of the adoption of Resolution 2017-48?
Chesney.
Aye.
Clem.
Aye.
McClanathan.
Aye.
Ross.
Aye.
Smith. Busker.
Aye.
Brashaw.
Aye.
Keister.
Aye.
And that passes 8-0.
All right, on to item number 12, the adoption of Resolution 2017-49. Madam Clerk, could you read this into the record?
A resolution authorizing application to the Illinois Department of Transportation for the fiscal year 2023 Local Major Bridge Grant Program.
Community Development.
Thank you. As you may be aware, the Hancock Bridge was built in 1952, and we made repairs in 2009 to the deck slab. With these repairs, we extended the bridge life approximately 10 to 15 years. McClure Engineering did our biennial structure inspection and noted that many of the previous concrete deck repairs have failed, and there are additional areas of cracking and delamination. Due to the advanced stage of deterioration, it's recommended that the city begin planning for major rehab or replacement, and that's where we're at. We're hoping to apply to the IDOT program to replace the Hancock Bridge.
Manager
Mayor.
Crowe.
So conversations over the last 10 days with IDOT that I've had is they feel that Hancock Bridge is a prime for replacement. Normally you're required to have it below 50%. We're currently at 59%. However, with the building of the new building for modern plating and the increased truck traffic, they feel that it is prime for replacement in the 2023. This is a federal program. We'll go out for federal bid. The estimated value to replace it's in the area of 1.7 to 1.9 million. So our match of this is 20%, which can be taken out of the MFT. And you need to be aware of that will reduce that year any road work that we can do in the community. However, this will go forward as to improve and support the continued growth with modern plating out there across Hancock Bridge.
Mayor?
Alderman McClanathan.
Thank you. So is the resolution that talks about seeking funding amount of $1 million, is that basically kind of a placeholder for us, and we'll be able to adjust based on the actual numbers we get down the road?
We actually, McClure's given us the figures, and
Actually, they gave us some figures, what they needed to be revised. I don't have final figures, but the minimum we can apply for is $1 million.
Will we be able
So
to?
it is a placeholder.
Okay, we'll be able to adjust upward as needed.
Correct.
Okay. And proposals due by tomorrow, did I see?
Piece of cake.
close of business tomorrow.
Okay.
And so everybody's aware, the major bridge replacement, the opening period it's only a 3-week window in which to go forward and apply it. And I discovered when talking with them about the Gladewood Bridge that they said, why aren't you replacing the Hancock Bridge as we go forward? So at that point, minus an engineer, I turned to the community development director and said, congratulations, you're the person who's putting and I contacted McClure, who's done the study, and they've been working very hand in hand with her to get this done. So,
Madam Mayor?
Alderman Brashaw.
Thank you. Manager Crow, you talked about the MFT funds perhaps being able to handle this, and I thought you mentioned 1 year, but when I'm reading through this on Section 2, it says 20% of the grant request over 5 years. Would we not then have 5 years to meet that 20%?
we would, and we could divide it up, but I wanted to make sure that you understood that there might be an impact where we have to give all of the money in 1 year, depending on the way the process is this is a federal bidding program. So it'll go into the pool, it'll go forward, be designated as a bridge for replacement, and then we'll actually go on bidding out initial engineering to get ready to bid out in 2020 to 2021 for the 2023 program. So this is just the first step to get us on that program. Madam Mayor.
Representative Bradshaw, did you
Thanks.
have a
I
follow-up?
had just one follow-up, real quick question. Sorry, Alderman Ross. This is for Nancy McDonald. I need a clarification of this term. You mentioned a delamination of the bridge. I'm not sure what that means. Can you explain that?
Well, I'm not an engineer, so maybe there's another. Is there an engineer in the?
So delamination is where it's literally, it starts to separate, and you think about your laminate. If laminated wood, the top layer starts coming off, or the bottom layer starts coming off, and it's sometimes caused by a combination of pressure and water within the concrete itself. And if you go out to the bridge, you'll go underneath it or on top of it, you'll actually see that rebar is exposed and visible in it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Alderman Ross.
I'd like to go ahead and make a motion to Resolution R 21749 to go ahead with.
Second.
Any further discussion on this resolution?
Mayor?
Alderman Keister?
Yeah, I guess the only concern I would have is you say it's deteriorating now, it's 59%, and this is 6 years down the road before this is gonna happen. Is that bridge gonna last that long?
So talking with both McClure and IDOT, the bridge is required to be replaced if it's below 50%. The discussion I had with Kevin Donnelly today at IDOT was he feels that the bridge will make it to the 2023, but that's why they were pushing us with the increased truck traffic with the new modern plating plant out there, that they wanted to see it on this year's major bridge program. Follow up.
Alderman Keister?
Well, with the additional truck traffic, now I don't know how much is gonna be there, but I guess that was my concern. If you're gonna have that much heavy traffic going over there, you know, that's 6 years down the road before we even get the grant and they start on it.
Well, unfortunately, this is the earliest we can go for a 2023 build right now. So we either get it this year, get it on this year program, next year will be another year out. So this is, and that's the way with the major bridge programs. They're programs they're bridges that are designed for truck traffic and are 80,000 pound and above bridges.
Okay,
Mayor.
Alderman Clanathan.
Thank you. So to clarify, beforehand, we actually weren't eligible to enter into this program based on the percentage. We're still a little bit high, but we were encouraged to apply this year so that we can get in on this 5-year time frame.
That is correct.
Madam Mayor, one more question.
Alderman Ross.
Okay, for Manager Crowe. As for DOT and McClure, has anyone actually come out and looked at the bridge?
Well, McClure inspected the bridge 18 months ago. And so they've actually looked at it. And IDOT is doing based upon the report that was filed in, was it 2015 with them, 2016?
Right, they came here.
And they looked at it, and they were estimating it based upon what they know is the current truck traffic as well as the condition of the bridge. IDOT is doing that estimation.
Okay, so they're gonna we're gonna go with that and kind of go with it from there.
Well, again, this is, we're having to use the best estimates we got, and this is the first time. A major bridge program is a 5-year process to
Right.
get it. So it's a combination. They wouldn't have even allowed us to, normally we have to be below 50% before we can even submit the program. But because of the traffic that we're expecting and what they're seeing with the delamination in the bridge, IDOT's concerned that bridge won't last to 2023 or beyond 2023. So that's what they want us to put it on this. Expedite it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so no further discussion. We have a motion made by Alderperson Ross and seconded by Alderman Busker for the adoption of Resolution 2017-49. Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll?
Chesney,
Aye.
Clem,
Aye.
McClanathan,
Aye.
Ross,
Aye.
Smith,
Aye.
Busker,
Aye.
Brashaw,
Aye.
Keister.
Aye.
Resolution is adopted, 8-0.
Thank you. Item number 13 is the adoption of Resolution 2017-50. Madam Clerk, could you please read that into the record?
A resolution authorizing a memorandum of agreement between the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency and the City of Freeport for the purpose of conducting corrective action to address potential environmental contamination.
Director McDonald.
Hi, I'd like to invite Ross Grimes from Fair Graham, who the city has been working with on this project. He can explain it a little bit better, or more eloquently than I can.
Good evening. Thanks for allowing me to participate tonight. If I could take a few moments to at least give council an update on the remediation process or the status of the remediation out on the site. In 2016, we started remediation, which included soil removal. It included stabilization of heavy metals and also groundwater treatment. Based on the confirmation samples and their analytical results from 2016, we deemed that it was necessary to go out and do a little bit more. I appeared here actually in March of 2017, and we went ahead with more work, and that's actually all wrapping up. So the good news is that the remedial activity, the physical remedial activity, is coming to a close. There are a few more just small items to button up. The institutional controls, the reporting aspect, that's what we're working on right now and planning to have that submitted to IEPA by the end of the month. So that brings us to the Highway Authority Agreement, which basically states that there are impacts outside of the remediation boundary that could not be remediated per the US EPA grant because it's outside of the boundary.
And this is also in reference to the Elbum Street project. It's our Brownfields project.
That's right.
Could you say that again?
This is in regards to our Elbum Street Brownfields project. So if you look at your attachments, there was just a little bit past that project boundary that's...
If you look at the hash mark out on the upper, you look at the drawing, if you see it, the hash mark there is a little tab that sits directly outside the boundary. That is outside the designated remediated area.
That's correct.
So this resolution addresses that area.
That's correct.
Madam Mayor?
Alderman Chesney.
Thank you. The designated area that was outside of the grant, is that determined by the IEPA as to that tolerance, or who determines what that looks like?
The designated, you mean the actual hash area? That was actually our fairground team, and we're proposing this to IEPA. So it goes right up to property boundary.
Follow-up?
Alderman Chesney?
And this remediation, what will be the cost to the city?
There will be no remediation. This is institutional control. It's an agreement. Basically, the city is the owner of the property and obviously the owner of the right-of-way. So this is an institutional control saying that if you were to dig and put in new underground utilities, there would be notification to construction workers and then disposal of soil, appropriate disposal of soil.
Mayor.
Alderman Ross?
Yes, Ross.
Yes, sir.
Where exactly is that at again? Is that at the corner of,
There are two primary locations. There's one near the corner of South Hancock and Album Street.
Okay.
It says SB 12 if you're looking at Exhibit A. And then directly opposite the site at the corner of Hooker and East Album Street, there are two locations there that were identified during remediation.
Mayor?
Alderman Chesney?
Arter, you got to finish up.
Yeah, just a minute. So if there's ever any type of digging or anything like that, that's where the problem could arise.
That's correct. The threat to human health and the environment is addressed through engineered barrier over top. But the issue is that if you were to dig into it, you would need to have some notification to construction workers and then again to dispose of that soil because there is a health issue.
Okay, how far down do you think it is?
These impacts are, I think they're 7 to 8 feet. I can check on that.
Okay. So what's going to be the best thing to do then?
What's that?
Besides not dig. What's going to be the best to do?
Well,
Besides not dig.
you can. This agreement is basically what IEPA is going to require as part of their site remediation program enrollment of the Album Street site.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no requirement here. This is just an agreement that the Highway Authority Agreement Memorandum of Understanding is that there is impacted soil there, and it will remain, and it's okay because there are engineered barriers over top of it.
Okay.
Madam Mayor?
Yeah.
Alderman Chesney was.
Sorry.
So this effectively puts a lien on this particular area, short of remediation.
That is correct.
Is that a way to look at it?
Yeah, I've never heard it quite said that way, but yeah, I think that is kind of a way to look at it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Madam
Alderman
Mayor?
Brashaw?
Thank you. So if anybody would
Oh, I
purchase
didn't hear.
these lots and they'd want to build, they would basically, they'd be pretty much limited to just like a slab building?
Well, this actual property, we are pursuing a no further remediation letter on this property. And that's actually part of the program and the remedial action completion report that we're submitting by the end of the month. So my understanding is the site is in the floodway though, and that
Because this is in the floodplain and we have issues with the property, this property will probably not ever be built on.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mayor, one more question.
Alderman Ross?
So Ross, I had to call you Ross.
Sure.
Excuse me. I've got to ask this. There's a no immediate danger for anyone, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, that's the most important thing
Mm-hmm.
for anyone that's out there listening. Thank you.
Madam Mayor?
Alderman Clem?
Ross, just a question.
Yes.
This is not uncommon on a site that's been cleaned up.
It is not.
Just so we can put it in perspective.
Right.
You know, I mean, if you ever do anything down the line, it becomes an issue. Right now, it's no issue.
You're absolutely correct.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have a motion to move this forward?
So moved.
Motion to approve.
Resolution, let's approve.
That's true. Okay, so we have a motion made by Alderman Keister, seconded by Alderman Brashaw to adopt Resolution 2017-50. Any further discussion? Yeah.
Actually, I have just one item to note. I would suggest that the second whereas in the resolution, it's just a typographical, clerical item. It's duplicative to the third whereas, so I think we just need to remove the reference, the second whereas, just as a housekeeping matter, that's all.
So noted.
No, I didn't
Madam Clerk,
follow. What was that again?
The second whereas that states the Highway Authority is the owner of the property located at 101-121 South Hancock.
Yes.
And then the third whereas right below,
Oh,
the city
sure.
of Freeport owns the property at 101-121 South Hancock Street. The city of Freeport and the Highway Authority, they're one and the same in this particular situation, so the two of them are duplicative, so we just need to remove one or the other, the second whereas or the third whereas.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll for the adoption of Resolution 2017-50?
Chesney,
Aye.
Clem,
Aye.
McClanathan,
Aye.
Ross,
Aye.
Smith,
Aye.
Busker,
Aye.
Brashaw,
Aye.
Keister.
Aye.
Resolution is adopted by a vote of 8-0.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 15 is the bids for the police squads, and that would be presented by Deputy Chief.
On September 1st, we had a bid opening for 3 new squad cars. One of the bids, 3 bids came in, one of them did not meet the specifications, so we compared the 2 bids that we received to the state bid from Morrow Brothers Ford. The chief is recommending that we accept the Morrow Brother Ford bid. The 3 squad cars, the wrapping, the prisoner's backseat insert, and the changeover would be approximately $81,980.
Discussion.
Mayor,
Alderman Chesney.
motion to approve.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Mayor,
Alderman Keister.
I just wanted to ask about the line at the bottom here, and it said 28,020 will be left out on a 110,000 budget for that, and requesting possibly buying an SUV for K-9 squad.
We do need to replace our K-9 squad. We would like to do that sooner than later. We're not specifically asking for that in this, for the bids.
Okay, so this may come up, we may see this later as a request for that?
Correct, that's the chief's idea.
Chief and I are in a discussion on this as we go forward. Some of it will come out of the remaining money, some will come out of the K-9 money. We just want to make sure we get the right vehicle and get everything in place before we bring it to council.
Okay, thank you. Since it was in here, I just wanted clarification of where we were going with it.
The reason that we had to, these 3 are the last 3 vehicles that are left on the state bidding right now, so we've got them tagged. If we approve it, we're going to go down. They've already contacted us about picking them up. So it's just on a side note, we did hand deliver this to all the local dealers bid, and none of them bid on it. So.
Thank you.
Mayor?
Alderman Smith.
Last meeting of the COW, there was a lot of discussion about going to a lease program for vehicles, and I understand or I recall from that discussion that we weren't going to include police vehicles because there was some issues with feasibility based on the age of our vehicles and whether or not it was really pragmatic to do that. Did you want to?
So I actually have re-engaged Enterprise on this, and as we go forward, the Enterprise lease police cars specifically, because the number of cars and the size of would be treated as a separate entity unto itself. And it has to do with the amount of aftermarket material on the cars, as well as the condition and the miles they put on it. Police vehicles on the lease program, they like to turn them around every 18 to 24 months. We wanted to make sure we were in good place as we're going forward with the leasing program with our fleet vehicles before we turn over to the police vehicles. What Chief and I talked about was looking at once we have the fleet leasing program set up for the rest of our vehicles, really hard look at whether to go forward with the police vehicles in 18 months to 2 years from now.
Bottom line, police vehicles incur a little more wear and tear.
They do. They're running all the time, and they all get to 100 to 140,000 miles really quickly.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor,
Alderman Busker.
one quick question while we're on there. You said we needed to replace the K-9 vehicle at some point. My understanding is correct, that's a take-home vehicle for that officer?
It is.
And how many miles are put on that vehicle with that officer going back and forth from his residence per year? Would you?
He currently lives in Durand. So he does put some miles to and from work.
Okay. I don't know what we can do to kind of extend the life of our city vehicles and work with that, but I'd like to see.
One of the things that we're looking at is we may have an opportunity to bring a second K-9 officer on board, and that was one of the reasons why we wanted to look at that and why we're having this discussion is really, as we get this second K-9 vehicle and we may have the ability, and they're still working the details, to get a second dog, which would be with what we're doing with the gang and drug units, they're getting a lot of work. So that's one of the discussions that Chief and I are having in this discussion. So,
Mayor?
Alderman Smith.
One of the things we have to keep in mind about the K-9 program too is the special nature of that. The K-9 is kept with the officer 24 hours a day at his or her home. So in order to make sure that that dog gets back to the jurisdiction, you have to provide special equipment, and you've got to provide a vehicle for that person to make that trip. So, yeah, I mean, the K-9 program requires a special commitment, not just to the shifts that the officer works, but the maintenance of the dog, the training of the dog, and the feeding of the dog, and the caring for the dog, even when the officer isn't on duty. So it is more cost feasible to give a K-9 officer a vehicle to transport the dog back and forth than it would be for the city to incur that cost by providing those services and then just sending the officer home like every other policeman. So I'm not sure everybody is aware that how that program works. That's all.
Thank you. Well, we have a motion on the floor made by Alderman Chesney, seconded by Alderman Busker for the approval of the bid from Morrow Brothers. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll on the acceptance of this bid?
Chesney?
Aye.
Clem?
Aye.
McClanathan?
Aye.
Ross?
Aye.
Smith?
Aye.
Busker?
Aye.
Brescia?
Aye.
Keister?
Aye.
Passes 8-0.
All right, item number 16 is the authorization to enter into an agreement with the Next Level for strategic planning. Manager Crowe.
Yes, Eric's here this evening. He did has a little 3-slide brief, but this is to move forward with our strategic planning. We have the questionnaires currently out. I know we've jumped the gun, but I asked everybody at the CAL that we could move forward. If you don't, Eric can give a real quick brief on this. And this is to answer some of the questions that came up during the committee of the whole.
Yeah, correct. Excuse me. I want to thank everybody for giving me just a few minutes to share a little more about the benefits of using a facilitator, a little more about my experience doing that, and then I'll tell you a little bit more about the process that we're going to use for the strategic planning. First of all, using a facilitator allows the city manager, who might be assumed to be the facilitator in a strategic planning process with all of you and staff, to actually fully engage with his team, the stakeholders, and all of you in the process, and fully participate, as opposed to being tied up designing and facilitating, taking notes, managing the process itself. So any of you that have even chaired the committee of the whole meeting like I watched you do a week ago know that when you're doing that, it's a little harder to participate than it is when when you get to just be there and actually participate in the meeting. So that's a small glimpse into what it takes. Additionally, there's a lot of planning beforehand and a series of products that I'll deliver afterwards that I'll get into as we go ahead. A little bit more about me and what I bring to the table. I'm a trained facilitator in two practices that are proven to be effective for strategic planning. One is results-based accountability. It's designed to foster collaboration among the participants, whether they be department managers or mayor and council, any kind of group actually. And it'll guide you in identifying community level results or goals that you want to achieve, as well as progress indicators, so ways that you can actually measure the goals that you come up with. It also identifies strategies and performance measures that can be applied at the administration and manager level. The second thing is something called collective impact, which is designed, and we'll use thinking around that throughout the process to help you think about the vision and mission that you want to develop, as well as who you can engage in the community to help support achieving that. So those are a little bit about how we'll go about and what I bring to the table in terms of training and process. And the other big idea here is that by having everybody participate equally who's in the organization or designed to be a part of the process and supported by a facilitator, you ensure fairness, you ensure that everybody's voice is heard. I can look for agendas, and I can help people who maybe aren't as comfortable participating in one type of process. We can switch that up in the afternoon and get a different kind of involvement, those kinds of things. So you're going to get a better process overall. For those of you who looked at my materials, I put my creed on my materials, which is I believe that when good people come together, and good people to me means people coming to the table who want to be there and have good intention. It doesn't make any judgment beyond that. And when you bring good people together with a good process, you can get really great outcomes. And so that's what I'm here to deliver for you today. Next slide. So we're going to take a 4-step process to this strategic planning. First of all is with the management team and community stakeholders. So we'll work with that group to develop information that will actually inform your planning and the process. We've got a questionnaire that we're using to gather some basic information from each of the department managers, and also just to help them start to think. It's really more what it's about. And then secondly, we'll do a session with the department managers and community stakeholders where they will go through a process to develop some priorities that they think should come forward in the process, and that'll be used, again, not to make any decisions, you guys make the decisions, but it'll be used to inform your process. Step 2 will be working with all of you in a similar but a little bit different way. Instead of, we'll have a worksheet, again, just to help you think and get your thoughts down and guide us through the process together, but we'll back that up with one-on-one conversations with each of the aldermen and the mayor, as well as the city manager. And we'll provide you materials from step 1 prior to beginning our process with you, so you can start to gather your ideas. We'll gather your ideas, and then we'll bring you all together in an in-person session to begin to think about what you've heard, what stood out to you, what priorities you want to set, and we'll develop a vision, a mission, a set of community level results or goals and progress indicators, and we'll also start to outline some of the strategies. Next slide. So after that, I continue working. When your session is over, I'll pull together all of what I heard from you into mission, vision, goals, and strategies. I'll work with the city manager to do that, and we'll deliver that back to you in a draft form, probably at a work session. And I want to note, I do have dates on here, but these are dates that we kind of cast out there, so we can change those to match your needs. And then finally, we'll bring the plan back in a format that's easily understood and usable well into the future for both you and the public to understand. and hopefully have it adopted at a council meeting. So it's a full process. There's a lot of skill and design behind it. And by having a facilitator, again, you'll have the opportunity to participate without, without having to keep track of everything else that's going on, I guess is an easy way to say it. Can I answer any questions?
Discussion?
Mayor,
Alderman Keister.
motion to authorize entry into the agreement.
We have a motion made by Alderman Keister to authorize the agreement with Next Level for strategic planning. Is there a second?
Second.
Don't let anything die for election.
Who wants the second? Alderman Busker is the second. Okay, well, we have a motion on the floor for this authorization. And Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll on the passage of this authorization?
Chesney,
Aye.
Clem,
Aye.
McClanathan. Ross. Smith.
Aye.
Busker.
Aye.
Brashaw.
Aye.
Keister.
Aye.
Passes 8-0.
Thank you.
Turn the lights off.
Okay, next is department heads. Finance.
I have nothing at this time, Your Honor.
Thank you. Any questions for finance? Director McDonald.
Hi, it's an exciting time. If you didn't know, Starbucks opened last week, and certainly Shoe Carnival's on its way, so we should see them open pretty soon. And we have several other projects, but I can't tell you about them till we dig some dirt.
Mayor?
Alderman Chesney.
Director McDonald, how are we
Yes.
coming along on our demolitions?
Well, we actually had some emergency issues on Friday. We had to serve an administrative search warrant. Thank you to the police department for helping us execute that warrant. So we'll have to reevaluate, but I think we're still on target to do at least 70, maybe 80. It just depends on how much this emergency demolition is going to end up being.
Good, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mayor,
Alderman Keister.
I just have a question about the demolitions and stuff. I had one just recently done by my house over on, the house was tore down on Locust Street. And the question I have is there certain time frames that they're supposed to be working? Because they would start at 5 o'clock at night and work till 8, 9 o'clock at night tearing the house down. And they're working on Saturdays and Sundays. In the daytime when nobody's home and they ain't bothering nobody, they're not working, they come in at night. And I was just kind of wondering about that.
Were they removing items from the home?
No, they were tearing the house down.
At nighttime?
They'd start about 4:30, 5 o'clock, and they'd go till 8, 9 o'clock at night.
It's my understanding that those should be done during working hours, so we'll follow up on that.
This is the one right near, on Locust, right near the corner of Avon. And this was done last week.
I will look into that.
Okay, and if you have any questions, feel free to give me a call.
I will follow up and let you know
Thank you.
what happened.
Public Works.
Thank you. I just wanted to say a couple of things. We've been working very hard out in front of the building with concrete work, and I'm really proud of my guys for the work they're doing. We're now waiting for railing to be put on for all the ADA requirements, mostly on the east side of the building. That's why the sidewalk will remain closed until that railing's done. I'll get a price on railing, I think, tomorrow, and I'll present that to the manager. Also met with the civil constructors today about the parking lot out here for paving. I may have an email in the morning to get a price on that as well. And just a little clarification on the bridge deck at Hancock. We'll treat that just like any other street. If it starts to spall and pothole, we will patch that as long as it takes to make sure it's, trucks and traffic can cross the bridge safely. We won't ignore it. In, I think, 2009, we did the major bridge deck repair with cutting and hammering. Some places we got all the way through and had to actually go up with plywood and do full depth. But we're probably not going to get that in detail of repairs, but while we're waiting for everything else, we will continue to patch that either with cold patch or, clean them out a little bit better and do hot mix. So it should be, at least road worthy. okay? Just a little reassurance on the bridge deck. That's all.
Mayor?
Alderman McClanathan.
Thank you. Just wanted to take a moment to say thank you to your department for the help you guys provided in the setup and for all the different events this weekend. It played a role in helping a lot of very good events go smoothly, so thank you.
You're welcome. It was a lot of work, but there were a lot of participants down there. It was a great turnout.
Fire Chief Miller.
Thank you, Mayor. No report this evening.
Any questions for the chief? Deputy Chief.
No report.
Any questions there? And Water and Sewer.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor. Let's see, getting acclimated here, paperwork's been signed off to where I'm now the administrative contact and the responsible operator in charge of the water facilities. That's been submitted to IPA, and I received proposal scope of work for well field and water treatment plants, and I plan at the October 2nd meeting to have a presentation.
Mayor.
Questions?
Mayor?
Alderman McClanathan.
Thank you. Was that presentation regarding the last thing you said there in regards to wells, or is it or more than that?
Well, it's for wells as well as a treatment plant for the wells that will be pumping to it.
Well, Farringham has identified as five possible sites going forward, so that was delivered to Tom and I Thursday afternoon. So we're both, Tom's in the process of reviewing those, so we'll bring forward to that on the 2nd, so then we can go forward and purchase the property.
Any further? Seeing none, that concludes the department heads. Manager Crow.
Yes, I also want to give my thanks to Tom. His guys, between the resurfacing, the sweeping, and doing the squares, really made this last weekend happening. We are, with the concentration on the building out, the concrete work out front, as well as getting ready, we have taken a little bit of back on some of the patching that is going on. We're going to get that back up to speed. I know we've had a lot of requests for that, so we'll start seeing moving forward on the potholes as we move forward. We did receive our new sweeper. Guys love it. They got through their training, so they're out driving the new street sweeper, and the new televising machine has been ordered. We signed the paperwork with U.S. Bank. We are working some RDAs, which we'll be bringing forward through the JRB on up to the committee, and I'm also reworking the NIDA contract as we go forward. The last thing is myself and the financial director attended the PEC Path meeting. Coming forward, I will be bringing more information. We do the ITEP grant. The city had one 2 years ago. We're still in the process of getting the paperwork done for that. And the IDOT informed me we're still about a year out to actually that work beginning to go forward. We will have to have a public meeting as we go forward on that. And that's all I have.
Thank you. And as the mayor's report, I too want to echo and thank the street department for all that they did on that. That was a huge success. In fact, we started that last year and with a small group of planners that pulled that together, but the success really comes to be able to pull it off is by all the volunteers that step up. There are lots and lots of people that is necessary to pull off an entire weekend like that for the paint, pedal, pour, and paddle. So for those of you that don't know, there were 250 squares that were painted on Chicago, which looked phenomenal. And it was, the feedback was one of the best family friendly events that have ever been pulled off. So that was a wonderful asset to the community. And last year for the tour to Freeport, we had a little over 100 bicyclists, and this year we had almost 200. So that literally doubled in its efforts. And 1,300 was the amount that they're estimating for the Brewfest, which is also more than we've ever had. And 40 brewers and over 100 varieties that were sampled. So lots and lots of people in the planning effort, and even more so in the volunteerism. So I just anticipate that that weekend will continue to grow and grow as we continue every year expanding on it. So keep in mind next year, if you want to be a part of that, we welcome volunteerism. So thank you very much. And council announcements. I believe we start with Alderman Chesney.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And I'd like to echo the comments regarding the Tour de Freeport, also the Paint the Port project, as well as the Brewfest. You know, I took it a step further this year as a representative of the city and asked the stakeholders what was the feedback and what can the city do better to facilitate these particular events. And normally you're cautious when you make those, when you put yourself out there, because you never know what the feedback is going to be. And I have to applaud the efforts of Director McDonald, Manager Crow, and others, because it was overwhelmingly positive. Specifically, the parklet that was outside of Mort's. For those that are watching home, business owners have the option to apply for a permit, get liability insurance, and put a structure on a parking space in front of their building. And Mike took advantage of that option. However, you know, our ordinance, along with the functionality and how this all interacts with one another, still needed to be worked out. But I was pleased to report to those that got an opportunity to have a cocktail and enjoy the parklet that we just figured it out. So historically, sometimes government has a tendency to stop everything until we figure it out. We actually did it in reverse, and we approved it, and I think we have it figured out, and I suspect if we don't, we'll have an ordinance that'll come up later, right? That's right. Yeah, so we have a few cleanup options, but it was a positive thing rather than it being blocked off saying the city wouldn't approve it. So Director McDonald, thank you for making that happen for those that had a chance to enjoy that.
Alderman Clem.
I just would like to echo, too, the success of the event this weekend. I was out to the VFW early, and there were people dropping off cars with racks for canoes and everything, and the bicyclers turned around there, and also there was a dancing group there. So it was really a lot of people involved in it. I'd like to thank Peter for getting a lot of the stuff together on Tour de Freeport, excuse me. And yeah, there you go. And I'd also
and
like...
you mean Peter from
Peter
PHK?
from PHK, yeah. Did a great job, I think, in getting that together. Also like to publicly thank Manager Crow. The last few weeks I've had some issues in ward and with different people, and things that have come up, and Director Crow has always been right there to come forward and do whatever he can in those situations. Sometimes we're very limited, but sometimes it just takes a conversation face-to-face with people. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman McClanathan.
Two things. First is just a reminder that the Countryside Estates Second Ward Neighborhood Watch is postponed a week. It's not this Thursday, but it's going to be next Thursday, just this month only. And I'm not going to recreate all the comments, but I just would like to echo the comments that everyone made, from the parklets to the 4 different events that we had over the weekend, to all the volunteers, to the good interaction between the city and those volunteer organizations. The job well done, and let's build on it.
Alderman Ross.
I just got a couple of things. Yes, it was a very eventful weekend. And it went with no problem at all, which is really good. The next one is Neighborhood Watch is going to be this 21st, Thursday night, 6 p.m. at the VFW. Today I had the pleasure of meeting with Mike Knight, one of the street workers that was using the new street sweeper. The gentleman seemed more than happy. That piece of equipment was very good. I mean, he let me look at inside. He told me, man, it's so easy to change the brushes on here now. He said, I don't have no problem. And he was very happy with it, and I was too. I mainly told him I wanted to see how the windshield was looking. But but no, he was very happy with it, though. I mean, there's nothing better than a happy employee. Last but not least, here's a question. I see we're getting new concrete sidewalks and stuff outside. Now, we know it might be an eventful winter. Are we sealing the concrete so that salt won't eat it up or pop it or anything like that?
Yeah, in fact, they were working to seal it today. Yep, and.
You got a seal on it. Good deal.
yes.
Good deal. All right, that's all I have. Thank you.
Alderman Smith.
I have no announcements. I was a willing participant in all the festivities over the weekend. I just would echo everybody's comments about that. It was a great collective effort and a great event for the city, and I heard nothing but positive comments about it.
Thank you. Alderman Busker.
Yes, just a reminder everyone of the 5th Ward Neighborhood Watch meeting tomorrow night at the First Church of the Nazarene at Carroll and Empire at 6:30. And also with the planned Hancock Street Bridge here in 2023, would we be able to work into that same time frame to make sure that that street mirrors the new bridge, to make sure it's passable for the extent truck traffic?
One of the things we've got on the schedule is to look at how the best way to approach that, whether it's raising the roadway. I've discussed that with Alderman Ross, or change the overall design of that area and go to a curb and gutter area down in that neighborhood.
Okay, Alderman Brashaw.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to remind the constituents of Ward 1 and 6 that we have a neighborhood watch meeting September 26th. That's Tuesday, the 26th, at Schwartz Funeral Home. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Keister.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple real quick things. First of all, 7th Ward Neighborhood Watch, Wednesday the 27th at the main fire station on the corner of South and Walnut. Will be at 6:30. I would like to comment on the festivities last weekend. However, I was out of town. I was unable to attend, so unfortunately I have no comment on that. Also, a week ago last Sunday, we had the fly-in, drive-in breakfast at the Albertus Airport. I'm happy to report that we had served over 700 people. The exact number I don't know, but I know it was over 700, and we had 31 aircraft fly in. So most of the attendees were from local, who got to see the airport, see the new facilities and stuff, and get to know the airport. So I thought that was pretty nice. That's all I have.
Thank you. That concludes council announcements. Public comments. Tommy.
Hi, Matt Summers. I wanted to tell you, some people was playing about the old Eagle store, and I got to know here something about the moat and stuff like that. And I want to show that to Cole or something.
Manager Cole.
So we are working with the development on the old Eagle store. The store will probably not, we'll probably be demoing that store to build something else there.
Or there'll be one there, Cole.
We're still working on the agreement as we go, the redevelopment agreement.
And I want to tell you, Joey Miller, welcome to the city council meeting. I hope you get well, and
Thanks, Tommy.
I hope you come to work some.
I am. Pastor Dixie.
I also say I am so glad to see how healthy you look.
Thank you.
She's had so much prayer backing her up, just lifting her up through this. And this is pretty quick, you sitting there like you are. So, also this Thursday morning at 7 a.m. is our city prayer breakfast at the Farm Bureau building. We have about 20 people that pray, 3 from this council that have been very faithful, and we pray until about 8:30, and we pray. We don't do anything else, we pray. So just hope that you all can come, be a part of it, and thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Seeing none, on the agenda is executive session. Madam Clerk, could you please read that into the record?
Pursuant to 5 ILCS 122C2, collective negotiating matters between the public body and its employees or their representatives, or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees. That is not right. I have the wrong one. It's section 122C1.
Scribner's error.
Here it is. The appointment, employment, compensation, discipline. It's number 2.
It's the union.
It's the unions. So I've got the correct number, 5 ILCS 122C2. I've got the wrong verbiage. Collective negotiating matters between the public body and its employees or representatives, or deliberations concerning salary schedules. I'm still reading it wrong, aren't I? No, collective negotiating matters. That's right. Yeah.
Okay, so do we have a motion to leave the open session and enter into executive?
So moved.
So it was.
We have a motion made by Alderman Smith, seconded by Alderman
I'll
Ross.
just argue with
Madam
this.
Clerk, could you please take the roll to enter into executive?
Chesney.
Aye.
Clem.
Aye.
McClanathan.
Aye.
Ross. Smith.
Aye.
Busker.
Aye.
Brashaw.
Aye.
Keister.
Aye.
Unanimous, 8-0.